Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video on Project Power Ladder. So this is going to be covering step 2, so I wanted to start off the video by showing you the step 1 for this video. So I already have the midpoint done, and that is the pen sketch that I'm going to be starting from to begin my ideation for the icon, or the simplified version of the character. So continuing on in this series where I start with a character design right down the middle, and then the next drawing I do, I go backwards, and I make a kind of a leveled down, or in this case, a level 1 version of the character, where I take aspects of the character that I like, and I simplify it. And I lean into a more cartoony, simplified style that I drew a lot in several years ago, and it's a very freeing form of art for me, because I can just sort of let my mind wander and my imagination go crazy, which is one of the main reasons why I like it so much. When it came to designing or coming up with ideas for the icon step of the Project Power Ladder, the main thing, honestly, is just breaking everything down into shapes. And for people who aren't novices, obviously you might shake your head and go, well, yeah, obviously. Obviously, you got to break everything down into shapes. But specifically for this style of this level 1 version of the character, I lean into simplified shapes and simplified forms as often as I can. And obviously, you want to do that for a lot of different art styles. However, in a lot of those art styles, you'll end up tweaking that and making it seem more real, but in this case, you sort of leave that cartoony stuff in, and you don't take away all the shapes. So as you can see here is a magnified high-res scan of that first pen sketch that I did. I knew relatively what direction I wanted this character to head in, because I had spent a lot of time working on the midpoint for this one. And so, breaking into the actual pencil drawing of this character, I had a very strong direction, and I knew where I was headed, so this one went fairly easily. The step 1 characters, even though they are technically simple, I would say they're a bit like, for my drawing style, they're a bit like what a haiku is for a poem, right? Because you're trying to find aspects of that midpoint character that are universal, and then finding ways of communicating that in a simpler way. And so you have to try and carry a lot of the same information, just in a simpler, shortened form. And I find something that's very helpful for the icon version of the character, or the level 1, is to think of it in terms of filling up a box instead of a rectangle. So for the midpoint character, they usually stand proud. Obviously, like I said in the first video, they're facing forward. But for these characters, I usually try and have them sprawled out a little bit, and they take up a lot more space, and there's a lot more energy and cartoonishness about them. Lean into the 2D form, and don't worry too much about making it too realistic. And again, that's where a lot of the fun and the freedom comes for me as an artist, being able to switch up styles. So you can see here, I'm inking with my largest size felt tip ink pen that I have. I think it's technically a fine liner. It's just a really thick one. I think this one's a Papermate, and I don't remember what exactly it is, but I've loved using these things. I found them years ago, and I've found that for more cartoony type characters, it just leaves these beautiful black outlines that just makes the drawings pop in a really cool way. And for these icon characters, or the level 1 version, oftentimes what I will do is I will go through the whole thing with unbroken lines. That's the huge difference between step 1 and step 2 of the Project Power Ladder, is that with the midpoint, you're trying to break up those lines to give it a different look to it, but in the more cartoony icon version of the character, you're trying to lean into that. So not only are there unbroken lines within the borders of the character, but I actually double line the outside. Again, leaning into that cartoony, almost sticker-esque quality of drawing attention to the borders and actually emphasizing them to lean into that more cartoonish aesthetic. This character, since they're basically based on a Batman action figure that I have, the only real difference or special thing about that character is that the action figure itself is massive, it's huge, and the color palette is very strange. I showed the picture of the Batman action figure that this character is based on at the beginning of the video, and for some reason that version of Batman had obviously black, which is not unusual, but it had this sort of odd, almost purple-brown accents on the cowl and the gloves and the boots, and it was just a very odd choice of color that I actually really, really liked, so I wanted to lean into that. I wanted that to guide a lot of what I was doing. So I wanted to make a superhero character. I knew that I wanted it to be a female character, and I wanted them to be really tall and really strong like the Batman action figure, but I really wanted to lean into that color palette because that was one of the huge things that I liked about it. And it worked out because it sort of lent itself to a nighttime vigilante crime-fighting character, and I was able to incorporate sort of the bat aesthetic with the cloak connected to the back of their gloves. And yeah, I felt very happy with this design. Again, a lot of times when it comes to the level 1 version, level 2 version, level 3 version, doesn't matter which one, usually I don't get exactly what I'm going for in the first attempt with the pen sketches. However, I will say specifically for the icon version of the character, it's a little bit easier because you're free to play a lot more, and if it doesn't turn out perfect, I guess for me, I've just learned over the years to let that go, because again, you're showing progression, and you're showing the differences between them, and you're showcasing that. You're elevating the differences. And so it doesn't have to be one-to-one. You don't have to stress about making the boots the exact same color as you have in the midpoint or things like that. You can toy around with what you're doing. And I think that's one of the big reasons why I love sort of reverting back to this older style that I used to draw in, is it is so visually freeing, and it's such a fun experience to draw in this style. Like, it's not something that I would ever want to do permanently as my guiding style, but it's such a fun break from a lot of the other artwork that I do, and it's one of the forms or one of the styles that I find the most freedom in and probably the most fun. And I love drawing in this more simplified or cartoony style. So yeah, a lot of it is just taking the ideas that you have from the midpoint, simplifying it, and then thinking in a backwards manner, okay, what are the sort of origins of this character? How could this design evolve? And where are the seeds that the design will eventually borrow from for the later steps? I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm loving making these videos on Project Power Ladder. I'm going to do part 3 probably next month, but with school starting back up, things are going to be kind of crazy, so hopefully I'll be able to stay on top of it. But just about there is when I finished what I was doing, add my signature, and boom, it's done. And there is the final product. But yeah, I want to thank you all for watching this video on the icon, or the level 1 version of the character. This character's name is Shade, and she's awesome. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.